In our headlines on this Thursday, September 18th, here in South Korea. The U.S. Federal Reserve lowers its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points to mark the first cut since last December amid concerns of the labor market and economic growth. Meanwhile, prospects of U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping partaking in the APEC Leaders Summit in the Korean city of Gyeongju this autumn are growing. And over in the southern port city of Busan, director Park Chan-wook's latest big-screen production, No Other Choice, opens Asia's largest film festival, which celebrates its 30th birthday this year. U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has announced a 0.25 percentage point rate cut, which is the first in 9 months and also the first in what is expected to be a total of 3 reductions this year. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off.
U.S. Federal Reserve has cut its benchmark rate by 0.25 percentage points. With the cut, the rate now stands between 4% and 4.25%. The decision on Wednesday local time marks the first rate cut for this year and the first since the Trump administration took office in January, as the Fed had held the rate steady since last December's cut. Speaking to journalists, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the balance of risks has shifted as the downside risk of unemployment has increased.
While the unemployment rate remains low, it has edged up. Job gains have slowed and downside risks to employment have risen. At the same time, inflation has risen recently and remains somewhat elevated.
In a press release, the central bank also mentioned a somewhat elevated inflation risk due to tariffs, though Powell said the effects of the tariffs on economic activity and inflation are yet to be seen.
Higher tariffs have begun to push up prices in some categories of goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen. A reasonable base case is that the effects on inflation will be relatively short-lived.
One of the Fed governors, Stephen Myron, who was appointed by President Trump and only took office the day before the decision, actually voted for a bigger interest rate cut of 0.5 percentage points. According to the Fed's latest dot plot, which shows policymakers' interest rate projections, there could be 2 additional rate cuts this year in upcoming FOMC meetings in October and December. As a result of the September rate cut, the interest rate differential between Seoul and Washington has narrowed to 1.75 percentage points, with South Korea's rate being at 2.5%. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And investors here on the local bourse reacted favorably to news of the rate reduction by the U.S. Federal Reserve, with stocks here maintaining their strong momentum. Our correspondent Park Chun-an covers the market reaction and more.
Following the U.S. Federal Reserve's first rate cut of the year on Wednesday, global stock markets, especially in Asia, including South Korea, continued to rise. The Fed indicated a median federal funds rate of 3.6% for the end of this year, suggesting 2 additional rate cuts are likely at the October and December Federal Open Market Committee meetings. Policymakers then projected a median interest rate of 3.4% at the end of 2026 and a long-term target rate to stay at around 3%. Global stocks either rebounded or set new record highs following the Fed's plans for long-term interest rate cuts. U.S. stock indexes such as the S&P 500 and Nasdaq dipped slightly on Wednesday ahead of the interest rate decision, but recovered most of their losses after the announcement. Asian stocks rose to previous all-time highs the following day as investors viewed the Fed's stance positively, with expectations outweighing concerns over an economic slowdown. South Korea's Kospi gained 1.4% to break another high at over 3,460 points, led by semiconductor stocks. Japan's Nikkei 225 also claimed another record as it climbed to over 45,300 at the market's close, boosted by export-related shares' strong performances. Following the interest rate decision, South Korean government agencies said that they would plan appropriate fiscal responses. An official from the Bank of Korea stated that due to the Fed's first rate cut in 9 months, it has become easier for it to operate monetary policy with a focus on domestic economic conditions, inflation, and financial stability. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy and Finance Koo Yoon-chul noted at a macro-financial meeting that global markets reacted largely in line with expectations to the Fed's rate cut, though sentiment was mixed as investors weighed the U.S. Fed chairman's remarks on lingering uncertainties. Koo also stressed that the ministry will closely monitor risks, respond swiftly if needed, and maintain constant communication with relevant agencies to ensure stability in the economy and financial markets. 박준환, 아리랑 뉴스.
On the diplomatic front, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi sat down for talks and dinner in Beijing back on Wednesday to touch upon tensions on the Korean Peninsula and prospects of the Chinese leaders' presence at the APEC Leaders Summit in South Korea. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea and China reaffirmed their strategic cooperative partnership as Foreign Minister Cho Hyun met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Beijing in their first face-to-face talks of the Lee Jae-myung administration. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, Cho and Wang met for 3 hours on Wednesday evening local time for talks and dinner at the Diaoitai State Guesthouse. North Korea dominated the discussion. Cho emphasized the need for denuclearization and peace through dialogue and cooperation and urged Beijing to help bring Pyongyang back to dialogue. Wang replied that China would continue to play a constructive role for peace and stability on the peninsula and continue communicating with Seoul. Speaking to the media afterwards, Cho said Wang had provided an explanation regarding North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visit to China earlier this month. While Beijing made no explicit mention of denuclearization, Cho noted China's policy on the peninsula appears unchanged. This would be reassuring for Seoul, as the North Korea-China summit raised concerns as statements from both sides did not address denuclearization, unlike in their previous 4 summits. Another focus was Chinese President Xi Jinping's possible visit to South Korea for the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju next month.
APEC being held this year in Korea and next year in China carries great significance. We hope President Xi will attend the Gyeongju leaders meeting.
Cho later told reporters he felt it was clear that President Xi intends to visit Korea at the end of October. Upon Cho's invitation, Wang replied that he looked forward to meeting again in Seoul, with October viewed as the likely timeframe. The Korean diplomat's visit to Beijing preceded protocol, as it was actually Wang's turn to visit Seoul first. This appears to signal South Korea's pragmatic diplomacy amid the heightened rivalry between the United States and China. Wang in fact highlighted China's version of multilateralism, signaling Beijing's efforts to offset US leadership.
We hope, together with Korea and the wider international community, to uphold a uncensored international system and to develop the global order in a fairer and more reasonable direction.
Cho explained that while South Korea will continue to strengthen its alliance with Washington, it will also pursue the mature development of Seoul-Beijing relations based on national interest and pragmatism. He also stressed the need to respect mutual concerns, objecting to China's unauthorized structures in the Yellow Sea. Wang replied that consultations are already underway and that the issue will be properly managed. The 2 ministers also discussed shifting economic cooperation from a vertical division of labour to a more horizontal partnership, with the aim of directly benefiting their citizens. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Acting U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Joseph Yoon says U.S. President Donald Trump will attend the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju this autumn. Speaking at the Korea-U.S. Alliance Conference here in Seoul earlier on Wednesday, Yoon added Mr. Trump and President Lee Jae-myung would meet again next month, following their successful summit in the U.S. last month. With regard to the 2 countries' alliance, he reaffirmed the commitment to stability on the Korean Peninsula and to broader global peace, prosperity and security, highlighting efforts to modernize the partnership. Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung says South Korea will manage its relationship with both the U.S. and China, quote, at an adequate level. In an interview with Time published on this Thursday, the president pointed out that Korea cannot simply return, quote, to the traditional equation of relying for security on the U.S. and economically on China, given the current changes in geopolitics. He nonetheless added that South Korea could serve as a bridge between the rival countries
to ensure relations remain stable despite the competition as Seoul shares democratic values with Washington and geographical proximity to China. Back in the U.S., an American development agency based in Georgia has highlighted the importance of inviting back the hundreds of South Korean engineers and technicians who were detained and later departed from the state following an ICE raid. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
An official from a public economic development organization in the U.S. state of Georgia says discussions are underway to bring back South Korean workers who were detained in a U.S. immigration raid earlier this month. Hugh Tollison, president of the Savannah Economic Development Authority, told the Savannah Morning News on Wednesday that it's very important for the workers to return. He explained that they are the only people with the technical skills to install equipment and train employees in battery cell technology at Hyundai Motor Group's joint battery plant with LG Energy Solution. Tollison did not provide details on how the workers' return might be secured. Meanwhile, a new report from the Congressional Research Service warned that the incident could strain U.S.-South Korea relations. The report noted concerns that immigration enforcement could conflict with U.S. efforts to expand domestic manufacturing through foreign investment. It also referenced the pending legislation known as the Partner with Korea Act. The bipartisan bill would provide 15,000 high-skilled visas for Korean nationals, helping to fill gaps in advanced industries like electric vehicles and batteries. Meanwhile, LG Energy Solution says its U.S. battery projects remain on track despite the recent incident. According to the Wall Street Journal, Lee Hyuk-jae, the head of the company's North America division, told reporters at an auto industry event in Detroit that LG is working very hard at all sites to ensure customers are not affected. LG Energy Solution is currently building 4 battery plants in the U.S., including the joint venture with Hyundai in Georgia. More than 310 South Koreans were arrested on September 4th at the Hyundai LG plant construction site in Georgia. U.S. immigration officials say they were working illegally, some on short-term or recreational visas that do not allow employment. They were detained for about a week before being released and returned to South Korea. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The first interpellation session of the Lee Jae-myung administration came to a close on this Thursday at the National Assembly. Thursday's Q&A centered on culture, education, and society. The main opposition, People Power Party, questioned the suitability of the education minister's appointment to office, while the ruling Democratic Party underscored the perceived failures of the current education system. Rival lawmakers also continue to clash over reform initiatives unilaterally sought by the ruling DP that clouded the interpellation from day one back on Monday. President Jae-myung believes South Korea's future depends on its effective tackling of the challenges facing young people such as housing and jobs. To take a listen.
중요한 것은 청년의 문제의식과 관점이 청년 정책에 온전하게 반영돼야 된다는 것입니다. 청년들은 대한민국의 주역이자 또 회복과 성장의 원동력이기도 합니다.
Speaking at a weekly meeting with his top aides earlier on this Thursday, he vowed to build a reliable government that eases the burden and restores hope among younger Koreans. Also, ahead of this meeting, President Lee appointed 2 assistant secretaries for youth affairs, which are 2 newly created posts to promote policies for young people. In the southern port city of Busan, director Park Chan-wook's latest screen production, No Other Choice, opened Asia's largest film festival, which celebrates its 30th birthday this year. Our culture correspondent Park Geon-woo is there.
South Korea's southern port city of Busan has heated up, not because of the weather, but as star directors and actors walked the red carpet at the country's largest annual film festival. Among them were the main cast of the festival's opening film No Other Choice, Lee Byung-won and Son Ye-jin, as well as K-pop Demon Hunters director Maggie Kang and Frankenstein director Guillermo del Toro. 30 years, 30 stories. This year, the Busan International Film Festival is opening its new chapter in its cinematic journey. From its modest beginnings to today's grand stage, 3 decades of film history come alive here in Busan as the world now spotlights Korea's biggest film festival. South Korean star director Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice, which drew global attention after winning the International Audience Award at the Torrential International Film Festival, made its Asian premiere. The actors and director of the film expressed their excitement to finally share their hard work.
As an actor who'd worked on this film for a long time, I found it completely different every time I watched it, finding new details and mise-en-scene that I hadn't noticed before. It's truly a film that needs to be experienced in theaters.
Based on an American novel, the story was recreated in a Korean setting, reflecting themes of home ownership and patriarchy. Through this, the film portrays the limits and follies of the main character, something audiences will relate to.
On opening day, visitors flocked to the venue hours in advance, lining up for merchandise and rushing to reserve their seats.
I'm so excited because a lot of people and me myself, I think the lineup for Busan International Film Festival this year is especially really great. So I'm excited to see.
I've been coming for 5 straight years, but this seems like the biggest crowd so far. With the 30th anniversary, I'm expecting extended programs and richer content this year.
To mark the milestone, BIFF has prepared a range of special programs. One is the inaugural Busan Awards, a competition between 14 Asian movies taking place for the first time in the festival's history. They will be competing in 5 categories, including the Grand Prize and Best Director. This year also places a stronger focus on engaging audiences, with events more relevant to the visitors. A notable highlight will be the very first sing-along premiere of K-pop Demon Hunters in Korea. Altogether, the festival will showcase 241 films from 64 countries, promising global premieres and plenty of special programs to delight film fans worldwide. Park Gangneung, Arirang News, Busan.
And in other news, heavy rain in Korea's coastal city of Gangneung was largely welcomed by the community there, whose members have been suffering through a severe drought for well over a month. Our Choi Soo-young has the latest.
Torrential downpours are making it almost impossible to see ahead, with excessive rain flooding some roads in Gangneung. The city in the eastern part of South Korea has been struggling with a severe drought for over a month.
It feels so overwhelming. I never realized how moving it could be to see so much rain in Gangneung.
Water levels in the Obong Reservoir, which supplies over 80% of Gangneung's household water, had dropped to just 11% last Thursday, causing the most severe drought in years. However, heavy rain that started over the weekend raised water levels by more than 23% this Thursday. In the region, a heavy rain warning was issued as downpours reached around 30 millimeters per hour. Water supply vehicles took a day off thanks to the rainfall after more than 15 days of delivering supplies.
I hope that water levels will keep rising and finally ease the water shortage in Gangneung.
So far, the water level at the Obong Reservoir has been rising for 5 straight days. Though it is still only about a quarter of the normal level, more rain upstream is expected to flow in, which should push levels higher. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump has begun his second state visit to the United Kingdom, welcomed with a royal ceremony at Windsor Castle. Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, who arrived in the UK late Tuesday, were formally greeted by King Charles III and Queen Camilla on Wednesday. The Prince and Princess of Wales were also there to welcome the visitors. A royal salute was fired and there was a carriage procession through the Windsor estate, followed by inspection of the Guard of Honor. The ceremonial display included bands from across the British Army branches, national anthems, and a fly past, which was scheduled but modified due to weather concerns. A lavish banquet was held in St. George's Hall later in the day, where King Charles said the special relationship between the U.S. and UK has made us safer and stronger through the generations. A multi-billion-dollar U.S. technology investment deal, referred to as the Tech Prosperity Deal, was also announced as Trump's visit got underway. Trump and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer are expected to sign a handful of deals on Thursday and hold a joint news conference. However, the visit also drew protests, with more than 100,000 people gathering in central London to protest Trump's policies. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced Wednesday the first U.S. weapons deliveries under a new NATO-led funding program, stating that they will include air defense missiles. Zelensky also said Ukraine has already secured weapons funding of over $2 billion through the prioritized Ukraine requirements list, with an additional $3.5 billion coming by October. The new mechanism, coordinated by U.S. and European allies, aims to streamline the delivery of critical U.S.-made weapons. Under the package, Zelensky said the initial 2 shipments, each worth $500 million, will definitely include missiles for Patriot air defense systems, along with munitions for high-mobility artillery rocket systems. These are considered key to countering increased Russian strikes, especially as cooler weather approaches and energy infrastructure is most vulnerable. The new initiative helps increase predictability and speed of weapons deliveries through allied funding rather than only direct U.S. funding. The European Commission on Wednesday proposed new plans to restrict trade with Israel and impose sanctions on its extremist ministers in response to the ongoing Gaza war. If adopted, the plans would suspend trade-related provisions of the EU-Israel Association Agreement and would be the EU's toughest response to the war in Gaza. It would also include the reimposition of tariffs on goods currently enjoying zero-duty status, which would affect approximately $6.87 billion of Israeli exports. The EU is Israel's top trading partner, accounting for 32% of its trade in goods in 2024. The proposals require a qualified majority among EU member states and unanimous support for sanctions against individuals. Finally, paleontologists in Peru on Wednesday unveiled the fossilized skeleton of a dolphin-like creature, estimated to be between 8 and 12 million years old. The remains were discovered in July in the Ocucaje Desert, an area south of the capital Lima, which was once part of the Pacific Ocean. Scientists say the fossil was exceptionally well preserved, with the coastal mountains shielding the seabed from strong currents, creating calm conditions ideal for marine life, which led to the well-preserved remains. Researchers have noted that the fossil helps them understand past geography and how the coastline has changed over time. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
It has rained occasionally throughout the country under cloudy skies. It has gotten a lot cooler with this rain. Today's daytime temperature rose to only 26 degrees Celsius in Seoul, similar to the average temperature for this time of year. Tomorrow will be somewhat chilly, with a daily high in Seoul dropping to 23 degrees. Rain is forecast again tomorrow. It will start raining in the western parts of the country in the afternoon and spread across the country at night. In particular, heavy rain of around 30 millimeters per hour is expected along the west coast around dawn and on Saturday. Rain will mostly stop later on Saturday morning. Tomorrow morning will start chilly at below 20 degrees in most parts of the country. Highs will move up to 24 degrees in Daejeon, 28 degrees in Busan. Cool autumn conditions will continue throughout the rest of this week. Please dress in layers. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session.